Hi guys, hope you're well, hope you're having a good week. Today we're just going to be carrying on what we were talking about with your ring muscle ups. Okay, so obviously with your ring muscle ups, we've been through your hips to rings and we've been through that transition. Okay, so if you haven't seen those already, make sure you go back and have a quick recap on those. Okay, today we're going to be talking about stringing your reps together. Okay, so obviously once you've got your first muscle up, initially it can feel a little bit clunky when you go from rep to rep. Okay, so obviously what you want to make sure you're doing, particularly in a Metcon situation, is you're stringing those subsequent reps together as efficiently as you can. Okay, now a lot of this comes down to your body position, but then also your confidence in terms of knowing that you're going to go for that next rep and committing to that next rep. Okay, but there's a couple of things you can do to make it a little bit easier. All right, so once you get to the top of that dip, all right, so you've dipped out your muscle up, you don't want to pause at the top. Okay, obviously just holding yourself in that top position. A, it is quite fatiguing, and B, it's going to slow you down. It also tends to give you a bit more time to think, all right, when we want things to just flow quite naturally. Okay, the other thing which people tend to do sometimes is go down into the bottom of a dip and then fall down from there. Okay, again, that's a little bit more fatiguing because you're almost doing like a negative dip before you go down into the next rep. Okay, obviously it also takes a bit more time, but also it limits how much momentum you can keep from rep to rep. Okay, it's almost like if you were to do, say, you know, a dead stop, strict handstand push-ups, much harder than just touching your head and pushing off the floor. Similar kind of thing. Okay, so what you want to do from the top of that dip position, all right, is just let yourself fall back away from the rings. Okay, so this doesn't need to be an aggressive push. All right, you're not trying to fling yourself as far back away from the rings as possible. Okay, it just wants to be a very natural kind of fall backwards. And as you're doing that, you want to start to bring your feet back underneath you. Okay, what you don't want to do is leave your feet way out in front of you, because that's going to throw you off when you hit that full extension or that hang position at the bottom of the rep. Okay, so from that top position, you're going to push yourself away, and at the same time, you're going to start to bring your feet back underneath your body. Okay, and what that's going to mean is then that you can get into a nice Superman position when you come back into that next rep, where obviously your chest is forward, your feet are back behind you, and it's as easy as possible to get into that position, and it's nice and smooth because you're not going into a dead hang first and then having to wait for your feet to keep coming back behind you. It's all happening at the same time, okay? And obviously that's going to make it more efficient, it's going to make it faster, and it's also going to help you have more control over the rings, okay? Because the rings aren't being pulled around depending on how your weight's shifting. Okay, obviously the big difference between ring muscle ups and the bar is the bar's fixed, right? You're gonna move around it, whereas the rings aren't. So they're gonna move in relation to what your body's doing. Okay, so if you drop straight, have your feet out in front, and then you bring your feet back behind you, the rings aren't gonna be in as good of a position as if you can do everything in a much more kind of synchronized way, okay? And then when you're in that bottom position or that Superman position, instead of just letting yourself hang, okay, you want to be obviously fully extended, feet back behind you, but you want to keep some tension in your lats so that you've still got control of the rings, okay? Like I say, you don't want to let those rings just start to swing around because that's going to mess up your body position when you go for the next rep, okay? So you've got to be patient, you can't rush it. You're going to go into that full Superman, and when you're here, you're going to kind of have the rings so they're out in front of your head, all right? And like I say, keeping that tension in your lats, so that then when you can go back into that next rep, the rings are in the right position, you can push down into the rings as you start to go back into your hollow position, okay? Okay, when you do go for that second rep, obviously from that position, then obviously you're gonna bring in your feet forwards. It's important you don't rush to pull, okay? On the first rep, people tend to be more patient. On the second rep, it's easy to rush, all right? So you've still got to make sure you go through the exact same movement as we've been through before, all right? So letting your feet come all the way forwards, bringing your hips up to the rings, and then wait into the last minute before you start to pull and transition, so you're getting as much power from your hips as you can on that way up, okay? So hopefully that should give you something to think about, guys. If you've got any questions, as always, feel free to give me a shout.